What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, once again joined by my guy, Morgan Cannon. Morgan, we didn't get to do our Vegas, top plays. We kind of had some technical difficulties, but we're back. New studio setup, or at least new studio recording setup. And we're here to at least preview the Chargers. I kind of asked you, before we started recording, if you had one word to describe the Chargers, what would it be?
Inconsistent. I think that's how I would phrase it. Hope everybody had a great bye week, but I'm excited to be back here with y'all, back with Meko. But yeah, inconsistent, man. I would say their roster is really talented, and I certainly wouldn't have thought they'd only be 4-4 at this point with some weird losses. I mean, it's the NFL, so it's a week-to-week league, but they've got some weird losses. Like we talked about it, right?
Yeah, I mean they've beaten the teams that they're supposed to, if we can say that in the NFL, right? Obviously you can lose any given Sunday, but they've beaten the teams that have been struggling so far through the year, right? They beat Minnesota, they beat the Bears, they beat the Raiders, and I believe they beat. There's one more team that's not very good right now.
Did you say the Dolphins already?
No, they actually lost to the Dolphins.
Oh yeah, they did. You're right. Week 1.
Oh, the Jets.
There
they just beat the Jets.
AFC
right?
East.
So they've beaten the teams that have struggled so far this year, but it's the teams that are maybe a little bit better, or just as good as they are that they've kind of struggled. And like you said, the Dolphins are a good example of it. They played the Dolphins tough week 1. Game just didn't go their way, right? Tough game throughout, didn't quite go in their direction. They also had to deal with some injuries. Austin Ekeler was injured after week 1. And he hasn't still quite hit his stride yet. So I still think this is a very dangerous team, despite what we just saw on Monday night, because I know there's going to be a lot of fans that are going to look at that Monday night game and be like, oh, the Chargers aren't that good after all.
No, and I would caution against that, just because you know how I am. I approach every week. I'm like, listen, man, it's the NFL. You never know. But the Chargers, we talked about it, man. That is a talented roster, top to bottom. They got a lot of dudes. Offensively, they have Herbert, obviously. They got Keenan Allen. We're going to get into it, but defensively, like we talked about, Meko, they scare me on that side of the ball, just from how they can get after the quarterback with just their defensive line. They don't really have to send extra. They will. But Brandon Staley, so he's the defensive mind there as the head coach. But yeah, I would caution against taking the Chargers lightly, just because they haven't necessarily looked the best throughout the 8 games.
No, absolutely. And like you said, let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to jump into the offensive side like we normally do whenever we start doing these breakdowns. And we're going to start with one of their top offensive weapons in Austin Ekeler, because we know this Lions, coaching staff, we know this Lions defense, it's always going to be about stopping the run first, and then everything else, kind of falls into its respective place. The thing with Austin Ekeler, though, Morgan, I'm sure you'll agree with me, the thing that makes him so dangerous is that even if you try to just limit him in the running game, he can still find other ways to hurt you, right?
Yeah, he's a complete player, man. He's been one of the best running backs in football for a while now. I feel like at least 3, 4, 5 years, something in that window, depending on who you ask. But yeah, I like Ekeler. They know how to use him. They know how to get him the rock in situations that he likes, because he's been doing this a while. So yeah, we can let it run here and see what we're looking at.
Yeah, so this is obviously, like I said, the first area where they're going to try to limit him, and this is in the running game. And this play is a very good example of, listen, if you just allow yourself to get blocked, to get moved out of the way, Austin Ekeler is just going to read rushing lanes very well, and he's going to gap you for big plays like this.
Yeah, and like you said, Meko, this is just really well blocked by the Chargers. So, this is something where the Lions are going to ask their defensive line, Aleem McNeil, Hutchinson, Josh Paschal, everybody, they're going to have to win one-on-ones, right? This can't happen to where Eckler's off and running in the second level, and it has to be, that's a touchdown saving tackle by Javon Holland. So this is, can't let this happen against the Chargers, because then, it will be on, because we'll talk about it in a little bit and get into some of the plays, but Herbert can obviously hurt you too.
Yeah, and so I think with this play in particular, there's a certain number of failures on the defensive side, on every level, right? Like you said, with with the defensive line just basically being bodied in this situation and, allowing just a clear lane to be open, then you have the linebacker position where, again, not reading their gaps properly. Like you kind of pointed out when we were previewing this, like number 51, you're not sure what he was actually like looking at or keying on, but him being out of position, I think almost really is the thing that really unlocks this play, because maybe if he's just a little bit slower to try to fill a gap, he can probably be in position to stop Ekeler in this situation.
Yeah, it's Long Jr. So I'm not sure what he's keying on. We could be wrong. So 51 right there. And he seems pretty sure about his run fit. He gets downhill but it just doesn't seem like it's right to me. And at that point, 99 loses his one-on-one, actually gets pancaked. And yeah, that's a tough situation because that's what happens though. That's why football is such a, awesome game, right? Because
yeah,
it's all so harmonious. Like if 3 or 4 people lose their one-on-ones on the interior, you're going to be in trouble, right? Like whether it's your linebackers, your defensive tackles, and if there's a poor run fit, Ekeler can definitely make you pay.
Yeah, and so again, defensive line probably doesn't play the best. Linebacker position probably reads this a little too early. Like I said, like when we stopped it at, Austin Ekeler hadn't even got the ball yet before David Long Jr. had already kind of like crashed down on the lane. But then you have a big failure from the safety position, and I love safeties. This can't happen, right? You can't have these diving types of tackles in the open field. This is former Detroit Lion Deshaun Elliott not being able to get Austin Ekeler down in the situation. And again, this goes for something that probably could have still been a big gain, but we're talking 15, 20 yards instead of 55, which is what this turned into.
Yeah, great point, Meko. Bad angle taken by Deshaun Elliott, and just kind of an indecisive tackle attempt, right? He's just caught between a rock and a hard place with Austin Ekeler in the open field. And yeah, this is what happens though when a running back's not really touched. He's way down the field before he's even threatened to be touched, man. So gets a little stiff arm there at the end. But at least Javon Holland is able to track him down and get him down where at the 5-yard line. So
yeah. And again, like as much as we can say, like, listen, the Chargers offensive line, solid, right? They have Rashawn Slater. They have some really good guys on that offensive line to be able to move guys out of the way. But for the Lions to be successful in stopping the run, again, guys are going to have to know their keys. Aleem is going to have to continue to play really well like he has been the last few weeks. And if he can, not find himself in situations where he's getting pancaked and getting washed out of, rushing lanes, there's a better chance that this defense will have of being able to stop Ekeler in the run game.
Yeah, and the Lions linebackers have been playing well as of late. So it all has to work together like it's been working for the Lions run defense for the most part this season, right? Like they've been really sound in their run fits. They've done a good job on the backsides, shutting down running lanes and cutback lanes. So if they can continue doing that, if the front can continue winning their one-on-ones, the linebackers can get downhill, the Lions should be able to slow down Ekeler. He hasn't been, 2021 Ekeler in a bit here.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this Miami game that we're looking at has been his best game on the year. Like I said, I do believe he got injured after this game. And since coming back from injury, he hasn't had a game quite like this yet. But again, this is the type of team, this is the type of back where it does feel like all he needs is one good game to start to get back in a rhythm. And with Austin Ekeler, it doesn't have to be on the ground like we're going to see in this play right here. If they can't get him involved running the ball, if the running game isn't quite working, they will find other ways of getting him involved in the passing game. And this is where, to your point, Morgan, about the linebackers playing really well, this is where your linebackers are really going to be keyed in on where he is, where he's lined up, and what he's doing when they go into certain passing situations.
Yeah, this is, Eckler's been there since Herbert got drafted by the Chargers, right? So he's definitely a favorite of him and Keenan Allen. But yeah, they like to get it to Ekeler in the passing game. And this is just one of those situations where the Dolphins are in man, and so everyone's manned up across the board. And once the play fake happens, and this is a really good job too by Gerald Everett, he's going to motion inside here, right? And then he's going to really sell like he's looking for a linebacker to block. So it sells the run action even more, and it just leaves Ekeler unchecked because he's off into the second level, and the defense hadn't accounted for him pre-snap. So you'll see, watch the linebackers get sucked in by really good job by Gerald Everett, man. Shout out Gerald Everett. I thought he's been in the NFL a lot longer than he's only got drafted in 2017. So
Oh, wow.
good design. But something the Lions are going to have to check, right? Like similar to what happened against the Ravens, where they got burned by just not being accountable post snap, right? Like, I understand he wasn't necessarily a receiver that you could, you're going to look at right there, especially after the play action. It's a good design, right?
Yeah, and I was actually going to stop it here in a second because, like, I think much like with the run play, I think there are some questions about, again, what the assignment is for the linebackers because, like you said, no one accounts for Austin Ekeler, and like you said, it does look like they're playing man in coverage. So you'd like to think that between 55 or 43, one of these guys is responsible for traveling with him once he kind of starts to motion out of the backfield.
Yeah, and I want to say because it's to his side, it's 55, but the guard gets away with a little bit of a hold there, and it's too late, right? So did you see that right there, Meko?
Yeah, he definitely gets away with a hold. I think it's interesting. Maybe they are playing zone underneath with the linebackers, but again, I think in this case, your linebackers bite on the play action too hard, and no one's there to account for Austin Ekeler, right? No one. So they clearly weren't playing man up because no one kind of keyed him as he was starting to like motion or at least start to make any type of movement in the backfield. So yeah, I think when you're looking at what the Lions are gonna have to do with their linebacker position, whether it's Alex Anzalone or Derek Barnes or Jack Campbell, like, hey, you're probably telling those guys like, hey, wherever 30 goes, like your eyes need to go. You need to make sure that you're manned up on him or at least have a count of him in every situation.
Yeah, good. All excellent points. And then this is the product of how Ekeler was successful on the ground, right? Because to your point, the Dolphins linebackers are getting downhill quickly because they want to fill that. They want to get that fit in, right? They want to get downhill and make sure there's nowhere for Ekeler to run. So in doing so, they get sucked in. And it's just a nice design because I like the action with Gerald Everett because he really sells it. It looks like he's coming through the hole to try to get a hat on a linebacker, right? So
yeah. And the thing that I love about how the Chargers use Austin Ekeler, I don't think it's very different than how the Lions would use a Jahmyr Gibbs or how they try to use David Montgomery even in the passing game, right? It's nothing too explosive, right? That was a simple, just like, hey, we're going to leak you out in the backfield, throw it to you in the flat, and we're going to trust you to make a play in the open field. And when you don't, account for a player like that, whether it's via coverage, whether it's with your linebackers, this is the result of that. And so I think, like we kind of exhausted at this point, the Lions are either going to have to tag, one of the linebackers to like specifically like, hey, keep your eyes on 30, or maybe this becomes a game where Brian Branch is kind of just like assigned to Austin Ekeler, where it's like where he goes, you go.
Yeah, and I'm anxious to see how the Lions deploy their defensive personnel to that point, right? Because they can beat you in a myriad of ways. Like they do have good skill guys. And Herbert can extend plays, but yeah, to your point, they're going to have to just not have what happened against Baltimore, right? That's really just the easiest way to put it. So this is similar to what happened with the Ravens, just guys leaving the backfield unchecked and they're off and running. Gus Edwards should not be running that far without being touched. That man, what I mean? But so
absolutely. Yeah. And so I think to kind of transition to the next player, like the next set of plays that we're going to break down. And I guess we should have said this at the top of the video. This is a long breakdown, guys, because this team is stacked. Like there were so many players that we didn't want to overlook on the offensive defensive side. So next up, we do got to focus on another element that's very similar to what the Lions had to deal with in the Ravens, which is a quarterback that makes it very difficult on your passing game as well. And then on top of that, having a top tier wide receiver that can also give you fits when you start to talk about Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen.
Yeah, good point, Meko. It's a good duo, right? Like similar to Ekeler. Keenan Allen's been with Herbert since he got drafted, and Keenan Allen is what you would call like a very quarterback friendly receiver, right? Like he's gonna be where he needs to be in terms of his landmarks. Like sort of like Mike Evans several weeks ago against the Bucks. He's a big guy, and he's not necessarily the fastest athlete on the field, but he runs good routes and he's really dependable, and his release package is crazy. But we talked about it before we got on, but this is just a crazy throw by Herbert because this is a no-no in quarterback rooms. You're not supposed to throw it. Herbert's on the numbers and he throws it to the opposite hash on a rope. So yeah, you're not supposed to be able to do this, but he's one of those rare arm talents. And yeah, man, this is him making a play when it's probably not there for most guys.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you're saying, right? Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, they've been together since Herbert got to LA. And this is just a straight up trust throw. Like you said, outside the numbers, outside the 40 when he lets this go, throwing it back across the field and just trusting that your receiver is going to make a play on the ball. This is scary stuff if you're a defensive coordinator, because you're probably feeling like, hey, we covered this as well as we could possibly cover it in terms of like your corners and your linebackers. And then the quarterback just pulls a rabbit out of his hat and is just like, nah, I'm going to go against all the rules and break you in this situation. I believe this was like a 3rd and 17 when Justin Herbert made this play to pick up a first down.
Yeah, you can look at I think it's Byron Murphy, right? Number 7 for Minnesota. When this plays at the very end of this, watch his expression. So he's just like, man, shrug, puts his hands on his hips. He's
like, what am I supposed to do to that? Like, bro, like he broke inside and like I think that's crazy, right? This action is all going in the direction that Herbert is running. So he's running to his left. And then at the last second, he's just like, oh, I'm going to throw it back right. Like, this is not the design. There's no way this is the design of this play.
No, I think we can safely assume that Keenan Allen was not high up on the reads for Herbert in terms of his progressions, right? I'm pretty sure this is just a backside dig that Keenan Allen's running.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I'm not really sure. This a deep backside in almost, and yeah, the other hash. That's a crazy throw. Just quite plain and simple. That's a crazy throw.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And so like that's stuff that, like, again, that's great chemistry between your quarterback and your wide receiver.
Trust,
and
like you said.
Trust, chemistry. And then we can kind of jump into the next play, which is again another really good example of, again, great trust, great recognition, and great route running by the receiver, and great trust by the quarterback in Justin Herbert, because this game against the Vikings, which is where a lot of these plays come from with Herbert and Allen, was probably was easily their best game of the season. Justin Herbert threw for over 400 yards. Keenan Allen went for over 200 yards receiving. Like, they were carving up the Vikings every opportunity they got.
Yeah, and they can get going. They definitely, they have that similar chemistry to that of Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Like, once they get in that rhythm, they can start really hurting you in a bunch of different ways. So this is just a really good throw against cover 2. You're going to see Herbert get this. Who's in the slot there again, Meko, that runs the go?
Oh, that's Quentin Johnston, rookie from TCU.
There you go. That's Quentin Johnston, runs the go. And it really puts the safety in a bind here at the top, right? So once 7, it's Byron Murphy again. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to say Murphy Jr. I'm not sure why I'm saying Byron Murphy. But he breaks open his hips to Quentin Johnston, so like towards the middle of the field. And then Herbert is able to just zip this ball into the turkey hole, right? Like that sweet spot in between the defenders in cover 2. So that's, again, just a talented throw, because he throws this from the opposite hash, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he definitely starts to move a little bit towards the left side of his offensive line, or kind of more of a straight drop back, but still, like, This
about
is
that
not,
catch.
to your point, like that's not an easy throw though, right? Like you're throwing it so far to the other side of the field,
Mhm.
and you still got to be precise, and you still got to have great touch on it to make sure that it gets to the receiver, and you're not giving the safety over top an opportunity to make a play on the ball.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly what well said, Miko. And I think this is where the disconnect sometimes is with fans and like arm strength and arm talent and like how quarterbacks and like scouts and talent evaluators look at it. But everyone like throwing it long is all well and good, but like there's only a few guys that can routinely make this kind of throw on like that's not a big window and it has to
Yeah,
travel a long way, like you said. So there's a lot of room for error, and this is just rare arm talent, rarefied air for Herbert because this is has zip on it, right? Like that's the thing. Guys that can throw this route like a corner against cover two from the opposite hash, guys that can throw that deep out from the opposite hash that like has to travel far and fast. So it's those are the throws that Herbert can make, in structure, out of structure.
yeah.
So yeah, he's gonna be a handful.
And those are the things that can break the back of your defense, right? Because again, like you're calling cover two for a reason because you're trying to take away certain things. And of course, there's a route for any given, coverage scheme to probably break that. But those types of plays like can really start to deflate you because there's no answer to that. Like you said, the safety's in a tough position where he's trying to figure out, do I take the seam route and pick up Quentin Johnston, or do I, you know, carry over to Keenan Allen's side? And again, it's a catch-22, and we've seen the Lions do similar things to opposing defenses. And so, again, I think I said this earlier, but like they've seemed to run similar types of play structures that the Lions have run. And so hopefully that gives Aaron Glenn some type of like comfort and be like, hey guys, we've seen this stuff, we've practiced against these types of plays. You just have to do your best. Or if you're the corner, maybe it's like, hey, you have to carry this route a little bit further down the field before you release it to the safety. Anything that you can possibly do to make the quarterback think twice before making, throws like that can essentially like really hurt your defense.
Yeah, it's gonna take some sound play from all the Lions DBs, right? Like you talked about Brian Branch, Kirby's gonna have to have a good game because yeah, you're gonna have to be on your P's and Q's. They have really good chemistry. Keenan Allen's a vet, so he knows what defenses are trying to do to him in terms of his zone or man or like leverage or like how he needs to be an easy target for Herbert. So yeah, it's going to be a good test, and you're going there. I know they don't have the best what you call it, home field advantage.
Yeah, it's LA. People be having stuff to do. Not everybody's
Yeah,
gonna come out to a Chargers game.
it's not Ford Field. Not everywhere can be Ford Field. Humble brag. But
It might
yeah,
feel like it this week. I don't know.
I hope it
People from
does.
Detroit might go out to LA for like, you know what? I'm trying to get away from this cold. Why
It's
not
already
go
getting
to a
cold
Lions
here.
game?
Exactly, Miko. People, if you don't live in Michigan or Detroit, where we live, like it's already getting cold. So,
Bro, it's brutal. Nothing, but not as brutal as like Justin Herbert can be. Again, so we talked about like, listen, great arm talent, right? Making throws from one side of the field to the other, whether it's a design play or just like breaking the rules of playing quarterback. But the other element of his game is that like even if you think you have him dead to rights, even if you think that like okay, we're going to start to get after him, being able to apply pressure and whatnot, he still has enough mobility to navigate the pocket and hurt you on it with his legs as well.
yeah, Miko, he's big, strong athlete. He's got that crazy arm, like we talked about before. But yeah, he's one of those guys that, like it or not, Lions fans, I would anticipate Aaron Glenn approaching this game the way he has other mobile quarterbacks, right? Because we talked about it before we got on, Miko. What we don't want to happen is for Justin Herbert to have like a Geno Smith performance like
Yeah.
he had against the Lions for the Seahawks, right? Like he got out of the pocket, he was able to escape, reset his feet, find DK Metcalf, find Tyler Lockett. And like you said, Miko, that is what Herbert is capable of here, right? Because if he's brought down here, great. But he isn't. He shrugs it off. And because we talked about at the top, 97 for Minnesota, they run a game here. and he kind of just gets washed. And it just leaves a giant window for Herbert to take off in. And he's really good, too, at doing that. Like, he learned from his early years, not taking as big a hits. And that was a nice little slide. You could tell he played baseball, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, he definitely realized pretty early in his career that he wasn't Josh Allen, that he doesn't need to take the Josh Allen type hits, but he still has that level of awareness in the pocket. And like you said, at the top of this video, I kind of highlighted number 98 and number 58, the linebacker, because these two players are kind of very essential to why this play kind of falls apart. Because again, 98 over pursues, doesn't quite get, a firm grasp on Herbert and being able to bring him down. And 58 gets put into a catch-22 where he has the running back running through his zone and he has to pick him up. He has to honor that because he's thinking like, hey, I can't give up the easy reception. But that essentially basically opens up the Red Sea for Justin Herbert to pick up this 12 yards on this run play.
Yep. It's always a culmination of things, right, Meko? So yeah, it's one of those things they're going to have to approach their pass rush not with caution, but they're going to do it soundly, right? They're going to try to collapse the pocket. They're going to try to not give him places to escape through. He's not necessarily looking to run. I wouldn't classify him as one of those quarterbacks.
Sure.
But he can definitely take off. He has that level of physicality to him where he's not going to be brought down with an arm tackle typically. So yeah, you're going to have to get bodies on him. Treat him like you would any other big physical quarterback, and hit him when you can, but try not to let him get outside of the pocket and make plays outside of structure.
Yeah, I would think again if I as a novice could offer my opinion to an Aaron Glenn, I think this is a game where you probably want Aleem, Benito Jones, those kind of guys just kind of operating north and south, right? Not trying to do too many gains, not trying to give any additional gaps to the offense so that, again, Herbert doesn't have these opportunities to just, wait for someone to over pursue and be able to pick up, 5, 6, 7 yards on a QB scramble.
Yeah, and I'm hoping this is going to be another big game for like Aleem McNeil because the Chargers interior offensive line, doesn't really do a ton for me. I like Rashawn Slater. He was my second favorite tackle in the 2021 class, obviously behind our boy, Penei Sewell. But yeah, Will Clapp, I'm not really. They do have Zion Johnson, the kid from Boston College at left guard. Yeah. He's been so far, still learning, I'm sure. So yeah, we need another big game from Aleem, man. I want to see. It'd be nice if we could get like his New York Giants performance last year. I want like a sprinkle of that again.
I'll take what he did to the Raiders last week. Give me
that'd be cool too. That'd be cool.
Or sorry, 2 weeks ago. Give me what he did to the Raiders 2 weeks ago, and I'm loving it.
Copacetic. I'm cool with that.
I'm trying to debate if I want to give the people one more Justin Herbert highlight because we've definitely harped on him. But I feel like this is the best one. Like, of all the plays that we've already talked about with Justin Herbert, this is the one where it's also equally impressive, and it kind of still touches on the same things that we've already talked about. The guy has extreme arm talent, Morgan, and it doesn't matter if he's going to the opposite side of the field. It doesn't matter if he doesn't have pressure around him. It doesn't matter if he does have pressure on him. It doesn't matter if he's on his back foot. He will still launch it 30 yards down the field with great precision to one of his wide receivers.
Yeah, we talked about it before, right, Meko? He's got what we call S-tier arm talent, if you know, you know. So, this is just off his back foot, off platform, almost like falling away, and just throws another frozen rope.
And again, the Vikings kind of got a little lucky here. They had a free runner coming at him, so they call a blitz. It seems to work. You have a guy that's not accounted for, but again, Justin Herbert's like, look at the wrist.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing else to say, but just this is top 3 arm talent in football, top 3, top 5, depending on who you ask, but no lower than 5, I would say. And I know he's a divisive quarterback on social media and whatnot. People call him a social media quarterback and this and that, but I don't know. I feel like Justin Herbert's almost on a track to like on a Matthew Stafford-esque arc.
I was just going to say that because I feel like it's what everyone like. It's very similar to Matthew Stafford, right? Where you see all the talent, but the thing, at least for Justin Herbert, the last few years has been like it's one of the reasons why Brandon Staley will probably be on the hot seat if this team doesn't accomplish what they wanted to, because he hasn't been able to find the offensive coordinator that can build a quality offensive system. They have the players, but they need a system that allows him to thrive. And so if there's another thing that can kind of go in the Lions' favor is that sometimes the play calling for the Chargers gets a little wonky, right? And it's no fault of the players. The players are top tier, like we just talked about. They have a great running back. They have one star wide receiver. They have, a couple other serviceable guys that definitely make plays. Jordan Palmer was the one that caught that 30-yard pass. Solid tight end, quality offensive line. But again, if you are allowed to, if Aaron Glenn can win the chess match against the offensive coordinator of the Chargers, the Lions have a much better chance of winning this game.
Yeah, that's where Aaron Glenn's going to have to earn his money and his head coaching offers, right? Like it's going to be games like this as we approach the second half of the season, and hopefully into the playoffs. Right? You're going to have to get wins against the really good to elite quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Like he's done it once this year. I want to give him his credit.
He did it to Patrick Mahomes, and
he did
awesome.
He did.
Right. And I would even say, like, even with Geno to an extent, like that defense held Geno in check until turnovers started to kind of pile on.
Yep.
Yes, Lamar Jackson torched us, but Lamar's been torching everybody.
Yeah. Did y'all see that Seattle game? Exactly.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, Seattle.
Yeah.
One of us.
Humbling, man. Humbling.
But I mean, we spent almost over 30 minutes just talking about the offense alone. We haven't even gotten to the defense, which you and I kind of agreed. This may be the more dangerous side of this team because they have, like, most defenses probably have like two good pass rushers. Maybe if they're like really good, like you probably have two guys that you have to worry about. If they're really good, it's probably like a defensive tackle and an edge. The Chargers have probably four guys that can like legitimately wreck your game if they're not accounted for. Oh, not to mention probably one of the top two safeties in the NFL in Derwin James, who that's the first person we got to look at because, full transparency, finding like high quality plays of Derwin James just requires to watch way too much film. But this was one of my favorites from this Jets game, of him just showcasing the ability to come up in some of these short passing situations and still be effective in the game.
Yeah, and at this point, he was drafted in 2018 at 17th overall, right? So he high pedigree coming out of Florida State. And at this point, he's definitely more comfortable operating in the box, more effective. But yeah, this is a big hit, man. He's getting downhill with, hate in his heart and unloads. Who is this that is on the end of this?
Breece Hall.
Poor guy.
Like,
that's tough.
Ben, do me a favor. Don't put Jameer in this situation.
No.
Please do not put Jameer Gibbs in this situation because he's too early in his career to be taking hits like this from a guy like Derwin James, because Derwin does not discriminate. I'm a huge fan of him ever since the play that he had on Kelsey where he like basically like body slammed him.
Yes.
Like this is a big intimidating safety, right, Morgan?
Yeah, I really like Derwin James too, Meko. I'm right there with you. So yeah, you got to get a hat on him if you are going to run concepts like this, and just be aware of where he is, because he can make plays like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see this play one more time because, like, again, I love safeties. I love safeties that can put on big hits, and that's a big hit right there. That's, like I said, don't want to see that happening to Jameer Gibbs. Don't want to see that happening to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't you dare put J-Mo in that situation.
No, we do not need J-Mo taking that hit right now.
So,
for sure.
But like we said, so Derwin James, absolutely a guy that you have to look out for. Then we get to the defensive line, right? And like I said, I think they have four guys. We're going to take a look at three of them. You have to deal with Joey Bosa. You have to deal with Khalil Mack. And then the Chargers added even more to that line with Tuli Tuipulotu out of USC. these guys just get after it, and it's not one of those things where like they're rotating them. Like they put them on the field together, Morgan, and make you like pick your poison.
Yeah, their NASCAR package is something fierce. They can put, like you said, Meko, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Fox, and Tuli on the field at the same time, and that's a tough foursome. Like that'd be a tough thing to deal with in terms of an offensive line. So, and they run games, as we're going to get into here. So, yeah, going to have to be a good day. This is hopefully where it's going to pay off, right? Where the Lions' offensive line is so highly paid, and there's a lot of assets in that offensive line. It's one of those games where they're going to have to show up because they can get after the quarterback.
Yeah, and so this one is, this was Joey Bosa's second sack of the game against the New York Jets. His first one was a strip fumble. This one, like you said, him and Tuli run a really good game, and this is just veteran strength. This is grown man strength of like, I got my hands on you, and you're not going anywhere.
Yep, Tuli does a good job of occupying the guard and the tackle for a moment there. Good job. It's similar to how the Lions use John Kaminsky when they run a lot of their games defensively. And then Bosa does a good job of staying tight. And like you said, Meko, it looks like he just has Zach Wilson's left shoulder pad area. And that was all he needed to bring that man down. So, oof.
Yeah. And I feel like we said this a lot when we were talking about Max Crosby 2 weeks ago, right? Like, Joey Bosa probably isn't someone that gets talked about a ton in the terms of like one of the more elite pass rushers, but he's highly effective. He doesn't have a lot of wasted movements in his pass rushing. He doesn't even discard this guard. Like he takes the guard with him on his way to Zach Wilson, and he's going to more than likely try to probably beat you with power. But he, like I said, he also compensates for not a ton of wasted movements. And I think that's what makes him so effective as a pass rusher.
Yeah, he's a really good pass rusher. I wouldn't put him in the same stratosphere as his brother right now, just at this point in his career. Not like he's super old or anything. I'm just, Nick Bosa's in a different tier. He's with the Myles Garretts of the world. But yeah, he stays tight, has got good hands, but like you said, Meko, is more often than not going to try to beat you, with the bull rush. He's good. Not great, in my opinion, at converting speed to power in terms of a pass rusher. So, but he's got enough in his bag to make people pay, for sure.
Yeah,
more than enough.
And again, this is that NASCAR package that we were talking about, right? Like this is Bosa on the left, Tuli right next to him, Morgan Fox, who also has 5.5 sacks on the year. You have Kenneth Murray over the guard, and then you have Khalil Mack on the far outside, who already has 9 sacks. Not to mention a 6-sack game, which is just those are video game numbers. We'll just say that those are video game type numbers, like putting the game on rookie and lowering all the stats of the opposing team to be able to do stuff like that. But like, this is what the Lions are going to have to deal with. And I believe in this play, this wasn't even like a 3rd and long situation. This was like 3rd and 3, and they were like, no, we're going to put these guys out there, run this type of play. So like, I think a lot of times offenses feel like, oh, as long as we stay out of 3rd and long situations, we can avoid pass rushing situations like that. And the Chargers are like, no, it doesn't matter what down and distance it is. We're going to send our top pass rushers after you.
Yeah, and Staley definitely trusts those guys, the Max, Bosa's, Fox, Tuli. They're good against the run too, right? Like they'll slide any of them into the 3-tech. So that's another thing too. I'm happy that the Lions, knock on wood, should have their offensive line back, because then you have Ram at right guard again, hopefully Jonah at left and Frank at center, and just makes dealing with that a little easier, right? Because then if they do start running games with that that group of pass rushers for the Chargers, then the Lions will be a little bit more ready to be more equipped to deal with that, in my opinion. So,
no, I agree with you. And again, I think having those offensive linemen available is a key get for the Lions so that they can be able to take care of this defensive line. Totally agree with you there. Another way that you can make sure that you deal with these pass rushers, don't try to do it with tight ends. Not with 1 tight end, not with 2 tight ends, because the Jets found out the hard way. Even with 2 tight ends, Khalil Mack is still that dude.
Yeah, and I understand scheme wise, sometimes you have to use a tight end to block an edge rusher, but he disposes of these guys so quick. And he's not Khalil Mack of 2018, right? But he's still a really good player. He's playing at a really high level. Yeah, I'm happy. This will be one of those weeks, man. I know I have already said it, but I'm happy that the Lions have Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker at their tackles. Some bookends.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in a play like this, right? So we obviously Khalil Mack gets the sack. Tuli deserves an assist on this because he kind of forces Zach Wilson to kind of step up. Rushing from the opposite side, he doesn't allow him to kind of escape in this situation, and basically goes right into the waiting arms of Khalil Mack. Like this group is dangerous, Morgan. Like I don't know how else to say it. When you start turning on the tape, like this is the type of stuff that you see game in and game out.
Yeah, and they can get after it like we've been talking about. Tuli's really good at bending the edge, right? At like running the hoop. So he'll get somebody on his shoulder like that, and he's just able to like rip and just, basically bend his way to the quarterback. So he's 6'3", 266, I believe. So he's not a small guy by any means, but similar to the way James Houston can bend an edge and bend a corner. If he gets underneath a tackle, he can take that and run the entire length of the hoop on his way to the quarterback. So, yeah, it's going to be tough to deal with. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Lions counter some of these NASCAR packages, right? Like, do you stay light? Do you bring tight ends in line to try to help your tackles here and there? Or do you try to? Yeah, exactly. And I think they'll incorporate a lot of, all of the above, but
sure.
It's I don't necessarily anticipate them altering their game plan to, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be aware of them, but you're not going to fully alter your game plan.
No, I don't think so either. And I think one thing to keep in account of, well, I'll put a pin in that. I want to get to this Tuli highlight really quick because that's basically our last highlight. But then I'll piggyback on what I was going to say about why I think the Lions have a better chance, especially with their offensive line. But going back to what you said earlier about, again, Tuli being, he's 6'3", 260. He's what probably is considered a tweener a bit in the NFL as a pass rusher. But he's a tweener in the good way. Like, I think sometimes the word tweener gets thrown out there and it's like, oh, you don't really have a role. And I think this is probably the best way I can probably describe Tuli in his rookie year so far. Because, again, it's his rookie year. We got to wait and see what he develops into. But so far, he's played like everything we thought Deshaun Hand would ever be when we had him with the Lions. Where, like, Deshaun had, like, that one really good year where he was, like, really getting after the quarterback. He could play on the outside. He could play on the inside. That's where Tuli is, where, like you said, he has great bend on the outside. But they kick him in at the 3 tech, and he's just as dangerous. Like, he doesn't lose anything, whether he's playing on the inside or the outside.
Yeah, Meko, he has good power, right? Despite only, quote unquote, only being 260. I realize that's still a very large human, but he still has really good power. He has really active hands, and that's you have to have both of those things if you're going to be successful as a smaller guy on the interior in the NFL. So here he works a bunch of moves together, right? So he's a pretty polished pass rusher for being so young. So active hands, he chops. I believe there's a swim worked in there, and he ends it with a rip, right? So it's just a bang, bang, bang kind of play. So we'll see it here. Chop, rip, swim. Yeah, man. And then good
a finish. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And like we said earlier, right? Like when it comes to like Bosa and Mack, like, again, they're veterans, especially Mack's been in the league for a long time. They probably don't have that same level of agility and explosiveness in their game. This is where Tuli becomes a problem because you will have to deal with power on the outside, and they're going to put the quick young stud in the middle and being like, hey, now your guard has to deal with this, right? Like, you're going to have to deal with a guy that wants to go 1,000 miles an hour up, in your face every opportunity he gets.
Yeah, good point, Meko. It's a really good balance because, like you said, Bosa and Mack, they both obviously have a deep bag. They're both vet pass rushers, but they both like to win with power. They're, trying to forklift you. They're trying to get in your chest, get you with that long arm, right? Like get you leaning and get that long arm that we used to see Trey Flowers try to work so much. So it's that kind of stuff that you're going to have to be aware of. And then at the same time, like you said, Tuli can make plays, be it inside, outside. He's fast too. Did you hear him? Did you see him hit the little Jordan shrug too? I was like, oh man,
isn't it like the old Bosa celebration? Nick Bosa's like college celebration.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I feel like that used to be like Nick Bosa's like shoulder shrug. Let me know in the comments if I'm right about that. I feel like that used to be Nick Bosa's, or both Bosa's. I think used to hit that in
this like this
Ohio State. Yeah, they used to just kind of hit the shrug.
Oh, maybe he did do the Joey. That would make more sense then, because Tuli's young. It's not like he saw Michael Jordan play like us dinosaurs. So,
but like that is
makes more sense.
That
You're
defense that makes it so difficult because like they have so many guys and they're going to put you again from an offensive standpoint in a situation where they're going to take double teams away from you. Like looking at that defensive line, who do you double? You kind of can't, because the minute you do, you put someone else in a one-on-one situation, and all of those guys, right? Tuli, Khalil, Joey. We didn't even get to look at Morgan Fox, but like, I don't think you want any of those guys on one-on-one situations or too many one-on-one situations where you're, dedicating too many offensive linemen to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is where Ben Johnson typically is really good, at trying to slow down opposing teams' pass rushes, right? Like be it with draws, screens, different run concepts that like can punish an edge player for getting too far upfield, right? And like opening up that, that gap.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. I'm anticipating Ben Johnson having recipes to like slow them down or at least make them think, right? Because that's what we don't want. And that's what happened against the Ravens is they got down, and then edge rushers, when they're really good, can just pin their ears back and not even have to think about the run or anything else. They're just getting after our quarterback. So yeah, it's one of those things it's complementary football. The Lions don't want to get behind against the Chargers. Ideally, you never want to get behind on anybody, but especially, with this group of pass rushers.
Yeah. And I think the thing, so I was kind of teasing this earlier. The thing that makes me confident though, in like the Lions being able to have success offensively is basically what you were just saying about Ben Johnson, right? Like I do trust that Ben Johnson is going to have a very good offensive scheme set up. So to understand how to attack this front, because maybe it is leaning on your ground game more and not allowing, these edge rushers to just, again, tee off on your quarterback. And again, you have explosive running backs. You have a David Montgomery that can be, that hammer for your offense. You have a Jahmyr Gibbs that can, again, find mismatches, against linebackers and things of that nature. And then you have wide receivers that are very good at getting open. Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, Josh Reynolds, like they're very crafty at getting open. So as long as this offense can find their rhythm and operate at the pace that they want to, this is a game that I could very much see go in their direction. The flip side is, though, I do feel like this team in the Chargers could pose some of the same problems that the Ravens did for this Lions team a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and I think that's all excellent points, Meko, and it'll be a good test, right? Because even though they have been inconsistent, right? If the Chargers do find their footing, they're a playoff team. It just depends on where they're at, because their division is, well, they have the Chiefs in them, right? And then the other teams are. So yeah, it's a good test, especially if Herbert's on his game and the offense is clicking, because you just said it, that he poses some of the same. He's not Lamar Jackson. I don't want to get it twisted. Please don't kill me, Ravens fans. I love Lamar Jackson. We do. We love Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that he poses some of the, like you said, Meko, poses some of the same threats to a defense.
Yeah. I think, like, again, offense poses some of the same problems, offensively. Their defense, again, if the Lions aren't able to get into a rhythm, like you were saying, that is not a front four that you want teeing off on your quarterback. You just don't want those problems. So, again, I'm I'm confident going into this game because I think the Lions being as healthy as they've been since the start of the year going into this game is a really good sign. But again, I do question the matchup a little bit. I do think the matchup probably isn't the best matchup for this Lions roster.
No, especially if they catch them on if God forbid the Lions have another off day, right? But then, that's the NFL typically, right? Like the Chiefs had an off day, and who did they just lose to not too long ago? It was
the Broncos.
So they lost to the Broncos, right? So I want to reiterate that it is if the Lions do fall to this Chargers team, it's not the end of the world. Like Meko's saying, it's going to be a good game, especially if the Chargers are clicking. It's a winnable game for the Lions. I don't want
Absolutely.
I don't want our viewers to get that twisted. We're just saying it's a tough team, and like we said, they're more talented than their record indicates, in my opinion. They got a lot, like we've highlighted here. They got a lot of dudes at a lot of different positions. So
yeah, so that's gonna do it for this extremely long film study, guys. Apologize, but hopefully you guys found it really beneficial. I might even add like timestamps into this just to make it a little bit easier for everyone to kind of bounce around in this video. But let us know in the comment section below. Again, are you confident? Are you concerned? What do what are the players or the things that you're most concerned about going into this game, or what are the things that you're most confident about going into this game, and why you think the Lions will win? Also, throw in your score prediction in the comment section as well. Would love to be able to see those and be able to interact with you guys. Like always, be sure to head over to pridedetroit.com. Be able to check out all the latest articles and any news and updates that may be going on with the Lions roster as we get ready for this game on Sunday. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We've been doing an awesome job being able to just rack in more and more subscribers ever since we hit that 10K mark. Would love to be able to hit 50K sooner than later, right? Not going to pressure anybody, but that's where we're going. That's what we're trying to march to. So like always, we appreciate you guys so much for taking the time to watch. I'm Meko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you in the next one.